Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with part 15, Division of the Hebrew Nation, of the Origin of Freemasonry and Knights Templar by John R. Bennett. Division of the Hebrew Nation. Solomon died in the year 975 BC. During his reign, he peacefully consolidated and recaptured, fortified or built cities or stations for commerce or protection at strategic points. He built reservoirs, aqueducts, many wonderful buildings, and laid out paradises and gardens. Many kings were his tributaries. Untold wealth and the wonders and curiosities of many countries flowered into or through the land, so that silver was nothing accounted of in his day. Many foreigners were attracted by his splendor and wisdom. Notably, Bilqis, the Queen of Sheba, with her marvelous retinue, to meet with oriental ideas of his royal magnificence. His harem grew to number 1,000 inmates, and contrary to the law of Moses, he not only multiplied wives, but by his marriages formed alliances with many heathen nations. In his old age, his strange wives led him to commit or permit gross and vicious idolatry. He was gifted with transcendent wisdom and the most brilliant mental powers. Yet, towards the end of his life, he presented the sad spectacle of a common Eastern despot, voluptuous, idolatrous, occasionally even cruel, and his reign cannot but be regarded, both politically and financially, a splendid failure. Before his death, Edom and Syria revolted. Tribal jealousies arose in Israel, and Jeroboam of the tribe of Ephraim, who was superintendent of the public works, began to plot the division of the nation, in which he was aided by the alienation of the people coming through the intolerable oppression and taxation that were necessary to meet the enormous expenses of the court. For this conspiracy, Jeroboam was forced to flee to save his life. He went to Egypt and placed himself under the protection of Shishak, the king. Hardly had Solomon breathed his last breath when the people arose in revolt. Rehoboam, his son and successor, whose mother was Naamah, an Ammonite, adopted his father's methods as his own, and with a haughty air unwisely provoked the resentment which justice and policy called upon him to allay. 10 tribes, under the leadership of Jeroboam, who, after the death of Solomon, had returned to Jerusalem, seceded from his dominion and formed the nation or kingdom of Israel, and took up their residence in Samaria, while the remaining 2, the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, retained possession of the temple and of Jerusalem under the name of the Kingdom of Judah. Thus, in 975 BC, was effected the division of the Hebrew nation into peoples who ever afterwards maintained towards each other an attitude of estrangement and hostility. In the following years, Jeroboam, king of Israel, abolished the worship of Jehovah and established that of the golden calves at Dan and Bethel. The priests and Levites and pious Israelites leave their possessions in the kingdom of Israel and are incorporated in the kingdom of Judah. The temple retained its splendor only 33 years, for in the year 971 BC, Shishak, the king of Egypt, made war upon the king of Judah, took Jerusalem and carried away the choicest treasures. From that time to the period of its final destruction, the history of the temple is but a history of alternate spoliations and repairs, of profanations and idolatry, and subsequent restorations to a purity of worship. After the completion of the temple, having finished that great work and filled all Judea with temples and palaces and walled cities. 2 Chronicles 11, 1 Kings 9. Having enriched and beautified Gezer, Bala and Tadmor, with the results of their genius. Many of these cunning workmen or members of the fraternity of architects passed into Greece, Rome, Spain, and other countries, wherever their services could be employed in the erection of famous edifices for which the ancient world is justly celebrated. About the year 721 BC, the army of Shalmaneser IV, king of Assyria, invaded Samaria, the home of the descendants of the 10 revolted tribes, captured the city of Samaria, the capital, and caused the downfall of the kingdom of Israel. Hoshea, its sovereign, was thrown into prison, the greater part of the inhabitants carried away captive into the Far East, the mountainous regions of Media, and their place supplied by the Assyrian colonists brought from Babylon, Persia, Shushan, Elam, and other places. These colonists brought with them the idolatrous creed and practices of the region from which they immigrated. They mingled with the remnant of the Israelites, intermarried, and formed the mixed people called Samaritans. The Israelites who had been exiled never returned, and what became of them has always been, and we presume will always remain, matter of vaguest speculation. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.